Can you believe that? Y2K, people were worried about the computers not working, and Craig and Parker, they're like, cool than the other side of the pillow. Let's make this weeded whiskey and barrel it. No, they were making it before that. Hello, and welcome everyone to episode 108 of The Mashup, the best bourbon conversation you're going to hear all week long. We are your hosts, Anthony, Caleb, and Kenny.
Hello.
Hello, Kenny.
What's up, buddy?
I don't know. I'm enjoying myself over here. Caleb looks like he's disinterested.
Hey, you know what? I got to make it back. That's all that matters.
I think I'm happy to see you back.
Oh, I'm loving to be back.
I love it. Oh, good stuff.
Well, anyway, like we can do this where I'm at my house and you're at your house and he's at his house.
Yeah, we could probably do that, but then that would involve getting technical, and then I wouldn't get to see you guys.
I'm kind of just...
What is that?
Well, you all don't want to come to the basement and see all the wood paneling?
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to come to the wood.
Just seeing Anthony and his incredibly sexy hair and you and your eyelashes just makes me feel inferior. So I really just rather just record without seeing you all.
You want to be this? You want to be on Zoom?
Yeah. Man.
Oh, okay. All right. You're the first person.
Then I turn the cameras off.
Yeah, talked to you since the pandemic that wants to be on Zoom. So there you go. Yeah. No.
I'm just teasing.
Well, gentlemen, have either of you been to Midway recently? You know what I'm talking about, Midway, Kentucky, right there out past, past Versailles right there?
It's a beautiful little town. The last time I was in Midway, there was a half marathon and did out there.
Oh, of course you were out there running and being all healthy and stuff. Right? Yeah.
It's been over a year now, but it's like a little hilly little town.
Yeah. I love Midway. Ken, you ever been there?
Yeah, is Midway where they have that nice little restaurant? Is that Windy Corner or no?
Windy Corner's out toward
that's our Bryan Station area, isn't it?
Yeah. Bryan Station.
What's the one? But there's another one, isn't it, in Midway?
There's like 4 good restaurants in Midway.
A couple.
But yeah, I think is it Heirloom that's in Midway? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's Heirloom that's
in
Midway.
So if you go out Leestown Road, you just take it all the way down.
Yeah.
You get to Midway.
I mean, I've definitely been there. I don't remember.
Yeah, so my cousin and his wife and their girls came into town recently, and they're getting into like the horse stuff. You know, the girls are like wanting to grow up and being able to be around horses, ride horses, that kind of thing. So there's this really nice consignment shop in Midway. I think it's called like Commotion Riding Consignment Shop or something like that. And so they really wanted to go out to Midway, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, right? So I'm excited to see my cousin. My family, I haven't seen family in a long time. I'm like, this is great, but I'm also like, Midway is like the sleepiest kind of little town, which is great for the kids. But after we're there for an hour, I'm going to be like, I want to get out of here,
Right.
But much to my surprise, Midway has a way of surprising you. And so we went out there. They went over to the consignment shop. After about half an hour, her kids were all into it. My cousin's kids were all into it, and my kids were like, where can we go? And I look right next door to the consignment shop, which is in between a consignment and a framing shop. And there's like this vintage bourbon store. And I saw old
advertisements.
No, they weren't full.
Oh, okay.
So this is like a vintage bourbon, I guess.
Like decor.
Apparel, like decor, paraphernalia, whatever you have.
Whoa,
right?
paraphernalia.
What
are you into, Professor Anthony?
Hey, you see a crystal decanter. That might as well be paraphernalia.
You lick one of those bottles, you might get lead poisoning.
Yeah, right. So I see all this and I'm like instantly drawn to it. I'm like, oh, I have this moment. And I'm like, honey, you got the kids? I'm like, because I'm going to go into this shop. And of course, when I walk in there, I was like, what's the deal here? And the guy's like, we just have all this vintage stuff, the framing store next door. We can like frame anything you want up for. You could just buy like these ads.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So boxes and boxes of vintage bourbon ads.
Yeah.
We're talking like when King Kentucky was light whiskey and,
It was light whiskey?
Oh, yeah. King Kentucky is like there's an ad I saw there that's like King of Kentucky, the lightest whiskey on the market, because that's when whiskey was going through that era where they wanted to make it more like the clear spirits. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all these ads and I'm like in heaven. And so my wife pokes her head in. My son comes in and they're like, hey, are you ready to move? I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm going to be here for a couple hours. No, I legit felt like that. But I was so excited. So you think that's where it ends, right? You think like, okay, I'm in the vintage bourbon store having a good time. I ended up buying like 3 or 4 ads, and I asked the guy when I was checking out, this made me feel a little bit bad. I was like, so where did these come from? Like, these are all original? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, how did you get these? I'm not even thinking at this point. How do you think he got them?
There it is.
Or somebody died.
It's even like more simple than that, right? So, people like nobody would want old magazines, right? If you had a box of old magazines sitting around, you couldn't give them to anybody. Well, this guy had the idea to go get the old magazines, go through each one of them, pull all these like perfect shape vintage bourbon ads out of them. And you know how old magazines were bigger? So they're very frameable, very nice pieces. And they probably cost next to nothing. And he's selling them for...
As in literally next to nothing.
Yeah, next to nothing. But he's selling them for like $5, $10, $15 a piece.
Yeah.
And I have no problem spending $30 there. Why not?
Kudos to him,
Why
man.
wouldn't you know? So I'm like, great business idea, perfect for the time.
That's awesome.
Especially when people want to decorate their man caves. And so now I saunter over while I'm in the store. This guy comes in with a flyer and says, over at the museum, because Midway has this little like, welcome to Midway Museum. You know, it's not anything that's that spectacular, but there's a lot of pride in it. Woodford County pride out there. I think that's Woodford County, right? They walk in, they're like, come see the bourbon exhibit across the street. And I'm like, my family's going to kill me now, right? They're all like wanting to do things in Midway. And I'm like, I'm in the bourbon shop. Now I'm going across the museum. So I went over there and had this awesome conversation with this dude. It was a presentation of artifacts of Todd McDaniel. And I think the other guy's name was John Batts. And so they had all this pre-prohibition bourbon that was actually distilled in and around Midway, like that Todd McDaniel's, it was like his family artifacts, like bottles and stuff like that. And so, of course, we started talking like bourbon and stuff we like to drink and things like that. So I had a good conversation with him for about 45 minutes. But I guess they
45 minutes?
Yeah, it was about 45 minutes.
What were your wife and kids thinking about? Oh, my gosh.
I know. I was the worst husband, father, and my family visiting. Like, my cousin was trying to play along. You could tell he was kind of like, okay, this is getting a little boring.
Wow.
But so I was over there geeking out. Actually, it's kind of sad that I have to report that as of recording this now, I'd hope to be able to talk about it sooner than I did. But like that exhibit was going on from mid-April to May, end of May. So I think they're planning on bringing that exhibit to Midway every year, and it was just really awesome. So I can tell you guys are bored to tears listening to this, but it was exciting and fun for me. And I'm just saying, if you're doing the Bourbon Trail and you're out here between Lexington and Louisville, I definitely think stopping in Midway, checking it out, is actually a good thing you could do. And check that store out that I was talking about.
That sounds like it'd be fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
But also, honestly, the first place you went sounds like that would be great for any bourbon enthusiast. I mean, just imagine getting for $5 to $10 each some older ads for your bourbon room.
And they had other cool stuff too. Like they had a full framed picture of the Buffalo Trace Distillery, from like the 1950s, I think. Like maybe right after Prohibition. It wasn't called Buffalo Trace Distillery, obviously, then. And the guy walked in and bought that. It was like a $200 piece. And he just walked in, was looking around, picked that up off the wall, and bought it while I was in there. So there's definitely a good market for it.
You got any pictures of Elmer T. Lee when he was a teenager?
I don't know. I didn't see any glam shots of Elmer,
Smooth.
but I wouldn't want one of those.
Wonder if his hair was smooth, combed over, and probably smelled like vanilla.
Oh boy.
So we didn't have any new shout outs this week, but I do want to remind our listening audience that if you'd like a shout out, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Facebook, and we'll be happy to interact with you and also give you a shout out on our podcast. So Kenny, tonight we have a very special bottle that comes to us from the Hill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Bernheim Kentucky Straight Wheat Whiskey, barrel proof. You are looking at a 2023. What batch is that? A123? Is that what it says? A123. It is 59.4% ABV, so it's 118.8 proof. It is a blend of 7 to 9 year whiskeys. And with Heaven Hill, they do actually give us the mash bill. We are 51% wheat, 37% corn, and 12% malted barley.
So this is a wheat whiskey. This is not a
It's
wheat
not
bourbon.
a wheated bourbon. It is a wheat whiskey. And MSRP on that is $65 hairs.
Dollar hairs.
Yeah, so if we're looking at this bottle, if any of you are familiar with the Woodford Reserve bottles, they're kind of fat and stocky. This one is just a elongated version of that.
Looks like a big flask.
It's got a pretty thick cork. That's a pretty, and it's non-synthetic.
Yeah.
Non-synthetic cork.
Or if any of you have been into whiskey a little bit longer and you remember Woodford, the original Woodford bottles, looks exactly like a Woodford bottle.
Yeah.
It does. You're
does.
right.
Well, it's got the wheat picture on the front of it.
So
it's a pretty basic looking bottle, but it's not the worst design.
This is the very, very first release of the Bernheim in barrel proof. So they really did pick just the same style bottle.
Yeah, no, they really just took the same bottle and just slapped the barrel proof on it.
Yeah, and this is where I start to get a little bit irritated with Heaven Hill, and you guys need to set me straight. So they have the 3 different, I would call them mainstream barrel proof releases that are out there right now. You got your Larceny, your Elijah Craig, and now the Bernheim that has entered the category barrel proof. And while we're talking about the bottle, I have to say that even though it looks nice, and I really don't have a massive problem with it, the problem I do have is if you were walking in a store and you saw the regular Bernheim, which has a 7-year age statement sitting there, right?
Yeah.
And you saw the barrel proof, those 2 things next to each other,
You wouldn't know.
would you know which one was which? I mean, I really don't know if you would.
No, not at all.
And I've always kind of like, I guess with Larceny, they changed the barrel label to black instead of like that tan color. Isn't it tan color that they normally have for Larceny, for the regular Larceny?
Yeah, regular Larceny is tan, and then their barrel proof is black. Label.
So that's
Yeah.
a little bit different. Like,
Yeah, that's the only one.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of the way Elijah Craig looks, right? So regular Elijah Craig small batch versus the barrel proof doesn't look all that different. And even though they've tried to change it, I mean, since they've changed the bottle, because, Elijah Craig used to be in those pirate bottles, but now they don't even have the labels on it.
You ever go to a liquor store and go pick up an Elijah Craig, what you're thinking is going to get barrel proof, but you just picked up an Elijah Craig regular proof, but it was a pick? Yeah, I've done it multiple times.
And that's my whole thing with that. I just wish they do a little bit more to differentiate that the way that this is, it's barrel proof. It says it right on the front, but I wish they did more to differentiate that in the bottle.
My guess is it has to do with cost, though.
Yeah.
I believe they have to file to get the bottles approved, like
Yeah.
the bottle design, and then just plus with them, they know they're going to sell it out anyway.
I don't know, man. If you're talking about cost, look at the decanter series. That thing's got to cost fortune.
But I'm saying for them, they can make one bottle, and that is Bernheim. All the Bernheim look the same. All the Elijah Craig barrel proof small batches looks the same, and it's easier for them, I guess.
I don't know.
Hey, I get it. If the costs are going to be what they're going to be, let's save money. But then why are you raising the cost of the regular Heaven Hill products and everything else?
Now Henry McKenna.
Yeah, Henry McKenna. We opened a can of worms now.
Yeah, no doubt.
Henry McKenna
People
looks
will
like
fight over that stuff.
I know, right?
Now, have you all tasted a Bernheim at barrel proof before? Did any of you do bourbon?
I've never tasted any Bernheim in general.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. That's be the first time for me tonight. So what we're talking about that, I mentioned earlier, this is the third in the barrel proof series. When I say I'm calling it the third in the barrel proof series, again, to remind you guys, comparing the Elijah Craig barrel proof and Larceny, those are the others. Elijah obviously has the longest lineage, even though Bernheim is probably a more important name in whiskey. Everyone knows that Larceny and Old Fitz is like the mainstay of Heaven Hill's wheated portfolio. But Bernheim wheated whiskey is not really a bourbon. It's a wheat whiskey, as you guys mentioned before. And the wheat whiskey was concocted by Parker and Craig Beam and made its debut actually in 2000, believe it or not.
2000, Anthony, I was 3 years old.
You were 3 years old in 2000? Holy hell, I'm old. We talked about Caleb being young. We didn't tell you how young he was. Now you can figure it out for yourself.
There you go.
So the year 2000.
Yeah. What were you doing when Parker and Craig Beam were coming up with winter weeded?
Hey, this is when all the boomers were losing their stuff about
that's what I was doing.
1999, right?
Y2K, bro.
Yeah.
Y2K?
We were worried about computers not working.
I read about that stuff in textbooks.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you believe that? Y2K, people were worried about the computers not working, and Craig and Parker, they're like, cool than the other side of the pillow. Let's make this wheated whiskey and barrel it. No, they were making it before that. I think that's when it debuted the first time they released it. So
that's what I was doing. I was just working, kids, and worried about our computers not working.
Yeah, to go back to that time period. So I'm actually kind of just interested to dive right in here, guys. I think we should just start nosing this and getting our initial thoughts, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Bernheim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All right away. So I played football throughout. Probably from
what position?
Okay, so I started off playing football.
Okay,
I weigh as much now as I did. I'm not joking. I weigh as much now as I did in probably about 4th or 5th grade.
Okay,
started playing center and nose tackle.
Oh, nice.
Cut weight down next 3 years later, and I was playing running back, tight end.
Okay,
but either way, if you play football, If you grow up in athletics and you're in those sports facilities and you go to the bathrooms,
Oh gosh.
and you see the stall, or you got the troughs. You go in there, you go into the bathrooms and you have the trough stalls where everyone's just lining up peeing together.
Yeah.
That's what this smells like.
Oh my God. Oh.
Okay,
dude.
so here's what's wild.
Brutality.
Neither of you had Bernheim barrel proof before.
No.
No.
I have had it twice
Okay.
at the Heaven Hill You Do Bourbon experience.
Ah.
So if anybody familiar with that, you do a tour / tasting. They typically have 3 to 4 barrel proof offerings.
Yep.
And the very first Bernheim, I was very excited to try it because they'd never released it. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'll probably bottle.
How long ago are we talking about here?
2 years. I told my wife, we both, when we tasted, we were like, this tastes like plastic piss.
Oh.
It is plastic and urine together.
No.
Now, that was the first Bernheim barrel proof for the You Do Bourbon Tour.
Yeah.
We went back last year, and it was much improved. It really
Okay.
was way better.
All right.
But it's funny, Caleb has the urine in the trough thing, because I literally said in the whole room, and everybody looked at me like, I shouldn't have said it out loud in that room of strangers, but I was like, this is plastic piss.
Dude, it is. It reminds me of football bathrooms, or you go to the UK football game, right there in front of everyone. You got everyone all drunk and pissed out. It's very dehydrated piss, to put it in better perspective.
Oh, and I was incorrect. It's A223. I guess they came out with this in February. So
As I'm nosing it as well, like I guess here's the thing. I'm laughing because I think Caleb has kind of nailed it here. I thought you were going to go with like the locker room smell. Like, so I was a soccer player.
Right.
And, you take all your sweaty soccer gear off. You got your shin guards and all this other stuff. That starts to smell pretty funky after a while. And no matter what you do. And I thought you were going that direction because that's kind of where I'm at. But I think that when you start talking about bodily fluids,
Oh yeah.
it's there,
and
bro.
other
I hate to
things,
say it.
you're just talking about stuff that's just
You go
pleasing.
into a mid summer practice, like July, around that time. You get really dehydrated and you go take a piss in the bathroom. That's what that smells like.
Yeah, you're right.
And I hate to be like that, because anybody knows me knows I love Heaven Hill product. But
Yeah.
but I
was
still
gonna
haven't tasted
say-
this one yet. I'm just going off the nose.
Wait till we get to tasting it here. So as we were throwing dirt on poor Bernheim here, he came to the United States with $4, and he went around Pennsylvania, because he was in Pennsylvania, selling items on horseback like a traveling garage sale. So maybe that's just a perfect tribute to this whiskey right now, right? So after his horse died, he moved to Paducah, Kentucky, and began working in the liquor business. That's what everybody does. Once your horse dies, you pack it up and you go work in the liquor business, just so you know. So one thing led to another, and he and his brother built a distillery. That distillery burnt down. I don't know why. They then moved the operation to Louisville, where they produced I.W. Harper. So did you guys know I.W. Harper bourbon whiskey, which is I think a Diageo-owned brand now. That's actually the I.W. stands for Isaac Wolf Bernheim. So that premium whiskey is what they started making. They were one of 10 distilleries that operated throughout Prohibition, and then they sold out to Schenley, like a lot of companies did back in the 30s, and so forth. A lot of stuff happened. They owned a lot of stuff. Then they were sold to United Distillers in 1987, and that effectively ended the reign of one of their, what they were considered to be a large giant in the whiskey industry. So that was sort of the end. And then where it picks up in the modern side is United Distillers sold the facility to Heaven Hill in 1999, and it became Heaven Hill's main distilling. I mean, even if you've not been into bourbon that long,
You always hear the term pre-fire.
yeah, you always hear pre-fire, and if you're ever don't understand pre-fire or what that's all about, just go Google YouTube and be horrified at the sight of fire tornadoes and everything else that was going on at Heaven Hill Distillery in
Well,
'96 from a
I
lightning
did have to
strike.
go back and Google that because in '96 I was still on my dad's scrotum.
It's
This podcast has officially moved from PG to
it's now explicit.
NC-17
No.
or something.
Caleb, I always appreciate that, but we're over here making us feel old and doing so in the most delightful ways. So, not to belabor the point, but of course, Heaven Hill basically burnt to the ground. But there's also a story about Orphan Barrel. You guys know Orphan Barrel, which is Diageo brand here. Acquiring stocks of this overaged whiskey from the Bernheim distillery. I think this has more to do with Diageo acquiring I.W. Harper and has less to do with Heaven Hill. So those stocks probably were aged I.W. Harper from the new Bernheim distillery until United owned it. And so that's my short but incomplete, and I'm sure there's a little bit of incomplete nature to that history. But the reason why that's important is because when you see a name like Bernheim and you know it's a Heaven Hill brand, you don't understand what the prominence it takes
How far back it actually
how far
goes.
back it goes and how many people owned it,
Right.
and how it's tied to I.W. Harper, which a lot of people probably don't know either. But there's a lot of crossover in between there when those distillers were sold and the stocks of whiskeys were bottled.
Yeah, and honestly, Bernheim has produced my number one tasting bourbon I've ever had, ever.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Come on now.
So, bourbon...
Caleb, he's lying, isn't he?
No.
He's lying.
No, he's telling the truth.
Okay, all right.
I've shared it with you all. I don't know if you remember it, Anthony, because you get kind of blitzed when you're at my house.
Oh, come on.
No, you don't get too bad. Bourbon Valley 24 year.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that
is the best. That's my best
Wow.
tasting I've ever had.
Yeah, that was good.
And I've had some really good Stitzel product, and it, from the 50s, 60s, that's great as well. But that Bourbon Valley 24 is just my, for me, that's my best tasting. And then there's also one that you love that I helped you get. And that's the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting that's Bernheim.
That's
Distillery.
Bernheim.
Yeah.
Bourbon Hill 15 year. So here's the thing on that.
That's delicious.
And where's the thing on that too? So Heaven Hill, acquired Bernheim. So some of these products, if you buy a Yellow Rose of Texas and you buy one that's a little bit newer, that's 99% chance it's Heaven Hill juice.
Yep.
If you buy a Bourbon Hill 15 year, the newer stuff is Heaven Hill juice. So I've got some older Bourbon Hill 15 that is motor oil dark.
Really?
And it is got that funk to it. So the thing that Bernheim's kind of known for, they had cypress wood mash tanks.
Okay.
So that cypress wood just gives it that mash, that extra little funk to it. Just a richness, a unique flavor. That's kind of how you can kind of tell. So it's kind of like I've got some Bourbon Hill that's like 2001.
Okay.
So I mean, it's still quote unquote pre-fire Heaven Hill per se. And then I've got that 1996 one that you put them next to each other. You're talking motor oil dark versus just regular caramel color.
Yeah.
So Bernheim is any kind of juice that's truly from Bernheim typically is very, very, very good.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, I kind of forgot about it until you told me. So I guess it'll be nice to see here as we go in for our first taste coming up here.
Well, this is no Yellow Rose of Texas, bro.
I was just about to say if any of this stuff
We're
even
already
compares.
starting off with a bad foot.
I know that you didn't like the nose, but sometimes I know sometimes
there have been some very few bottles that have overcome the nose, and the palate's a lot better. So we'll see here.
Well, let's go in for
a taste.
First taste.
Here we go.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. I can't wait to hear you dissect this because the first thing I'm going to say about it is the only thing that gets reminiscent of anything that's Heaven Hill is I get a little bit of the peanut flavor. And when I say peanut flavor, we're talking the skin of the peanut, the shell of the peanut. That's about it. The other stuff I want to hear.
The peanut is lingering on me right now.
Yeah, it's lingering. That's the only thing that's Heaven Hill-esque. But the other stuff, come on, man.
Dude,
hit me with it, man.
Very front of the palate made me just have a physical reaction that I did not like at all.
He did shiver, actually.
Bristling.
Yeah. But back in, I did catch some flavor. I'm going to have to go in for another sip.
Okay.
Let Kenny take over.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's really weird. I got either corn or just I honestly got a corn hit, even though it's only 37% corn mash.
Yeah. Like almost like candy cornish.
Yeah.
But like very,
So this definitely 100% for sure tastes better than the You Do Bourbon Bernheim that I had. 100% for sure.
The pilot project, we'll call it.
It's almost like a corn meal. Like it's not sweet corn.
How about those nasty Halloween corn things
Yeah,
that
that's
people
what
give
it
out?
is. Yeah.
And you know what
No,
it is?
it's not the candy corn. It's almost those pumpkins.
Ugh.
Those candied pumpkins.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But adding a layer to that, it's the candy pumpkins that are actually a little stale.
Yes.
And they picked up a little bit of the flavor of the box.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. Or there's some people that take those little candy pumpkins and then they put the peanuts and the candy corn together and they throw it all in a bowl.
Yeah.
That's what that is right there.
It's trail mix that's been in a cardboard box out in the garage, and the climate has been humid.
Yeah. Now the finish is not bad. I mean, it might be its only saving grace.
Well, the finish, I get the lingering traditional
It is
peanut,
lingering,
Heaven Hill.
You get more like an Elijah Craig barrel proof finish to it.
as we're tasting this, because this was recently released, I think this was just January release?
February.
January
223. Yep, I was incorrect when I said A123 earlier. It's A223.
223. So February, relatively new product. I'm guessing in some places because of distribution, this may not even be on the shelf yet. It may or may not. I'm not sure if you'll see it out. But the one thing I will say is Heaven Hill, when they introduced Larceny Barrel Proof, I remember it only being like $55, and Elijah Craig Barrel Proof was $75. This is in the $65 range. The only reason I'm going here is because you guys got to set me straight. I've been souring on Heaven Hill a little bit recently because of the way they've pulled back a lot of their core products, and then they brought them back out onto the shelves. Like, for example, the lowest hanging fruit here is anybody who didn't know what it was like before you got into Heaven Hill products. They had a white label 6-year bourbon and a green label 6-year bourbon. I think the green was Kentucky only, or the white was. Which one was which? Do you remember?
I think the white maybe was
the white was Kentucky only, but the green was available in more places. Those were like a $10 and a $12 bottle, or a $10 and $13 bottle with 6-year age statements.
That tasted like a $40 to $50 bottle.
Yeah, it tasted great. They pulled that stuff back off the market. They say they're discontinuing it, only to bring out a 7-year bourbon with a fancy packaging and age statement.
With a very high price tag.
That tastes worse than the green label.
Yes, it tastes worse. We did a side-by-side way back on the Mashup podcast with all 3 of those. And when we did it, I actually liked the green the best out of all of them, which surprised the hell out of me in a side-by-side. And I think I actually liked the new release less. But
because the new release is bottle and bond, but the green label is 6-year, 45% ABV, 90 proof.
Yep, and the white label was bottle and bond. So they bring back that 7-year bottle at $55, $60. People were flipping it at $70, $80 when it wasn't available. And I just kind of was like, how did they pull this big quick switch on us? And I want the companies to make their money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a hater that way. I'm just saying that I thought there was a better way Heaven Hill could have done that, except for basically pulling everything back and then going, here's premium. Now, they still have other things that they make, like JTS Brown, Mellow Corn, other things that carry bottle and bond statements and stuff like that are still relatively inexpensive, but I think it's a matter of time before those are gone too. So I don't know. It's just been a long, slow burn for me with Heaven Hill, where I've kind of been looking at...
No pun intended.
Yeah, God, that was a terrible choice of words. Thank you for reminding me. I meant no ill will with that, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I'm muttering. I'm stammering.
Well, didn't they announce that they were discontinuing the decanter series as well?
Yeah, the Fitzgerald stuff. But again, think about that, right? The old Fitzgerald Prime and the regular Fitzgerald were on the shelf. Then they started pulling it back, and then they're like, "Hey, we're discontinuing this, and here comes $100 glassware with, I like Fitz decanters. Don't get me wrong, but here comes $100 and $120 glassware with whiskey in it that's going to cost you $300 a bottle."
The old saying was that the Fitz Prime just got rebranded into Larceny, the regular Larceny.
Well, the thing is with Heaven Hill, like I said, I'm a very short time in the bourbon, just 3 years or so, but they're undervalued if you look at like secondary market.
Yep.
So Heaven Hill just trying to creep up a little bit just to make a little more profit, because I mean it's one of the things with
for the money on secondary market. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof in years past kills everything. Now I wasn't very impressed by last year's.
Well, last year, which we do the best of blinds each year, typically 5 or 6 of us get together. You guys were part of it. Last year. The year before Caleb was. So last year both of y'all were, though. Last year was the first year that a Elijah Craig Barrel Proof did not make it in.
Wow.
No, didn't make it
Larceny, which I've not loved Larceny too much. Larceny's Barrel Proof last year, one of the batches that we did, beat in the blinds the Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs in order to make it into that next round. So
the last series that we really liked was the B521 and the C921. Those were the last ones that we really liked. That was the first.
And they still didn't hold a candle, I don't think, to the 20
any of the 20s.
A, B, or C.
A, B, or C, dude. I don't want to get all the hype around all the 20s. I'm not going to tell you which batch it is, but
you can hype it up, because I know I've got 3 cases of each, so you can hype it up.
B520 is the GOAT. Let it be known. B520 beats all the pirate barrels. Kenny will tell me I'm wrong.
If not all the pirate barrels,
it beats all the pirate barrels.
And if you really need any of those, you just got to ask the right people. Wink,
Absolutely.
One thing, we've just recently did the Buffalo Trace kosher wheat, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we did bourbon.
Right.
not a weeded whiskey.
Yeah.
7 years old. This is a blend of 7 to 9,
Yep.
and that crushes this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess, but then we actually talked before about how wheat takes a lot longer to develop.
Yeah.
So you go from a wheated bourbon that's still corn dominant now to a wheat whiskey where wheat is the dominant grain in there. 7 to 9 just isn't long enough.
The most similarity I've seen between Buffalo Trace wheaters and Heaven Hill wheaters has been at the higher ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where they become most similar.
Pappy Van
Yeah.
Winkle 15 year and the
Yeah.
Old Fitz 15 year.
I see more similarity with Makers and Buffalo Trace wheaters than I do with Heaven Hill or Makers or Buffalo Trace. I think there's more crossover there for whatever reason. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Until you get to the Old Fitz decanters and some of the premium Parkers type stuff, Heaven Hill wheaters just don't do it for me.
Yeah, they're just a little bit. I don't know what it is about them. So, with that, with with all that being said, gentlemen, would you pass, try, or buy on this Bernheim barrel proof wheat whiskey?
I'm a hard pass.
Anything else to say? You already said it all.
I mean, if you're, what did we say? It was 60,
65.
65 bucks.
retail?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm a pass, even if I got it at 45. I'm still a pass.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm unfortunate going to say that this one underwhelmed me by a lot. I'm going to agree with you guys and say it's a pass, but I'm going to give this caveat, right? So we've seen what you guys just said previously, the unevenness with Elijah Craig. There's a bad year of Elijah Craig barrel proof, or not a bad year, but
There can be bad
less,
batches.
bad batches,
Yeah.
less than desirable
Absolutely.
batches. Larceny, when they started coming out with their barrel proof, I'm sure you guys remember this because I was an OG Larceny barrel proof guy.
Yeah.
When Liquor Barn had one of the first picks of that before it hit mainstream at barrel proof, I bought a bottle down at Liquor Barn, and I remember thinking I just spent $100 on this because that's what it cost at the time, and I was a little underwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And then when the first batch came out, I still wasn't. It was like, fool me once, but go ahead and fool me again, and I'll buy another one. So I bought the first Larceny barrel proof release. Did not like that. And I just didn't buy a couple. And then I think it was a C921 Larceny barrel proof, maybe, that really impressed
peanut
me.
brittle.
Yeah, and then I had one last year that impressed me too, but not all of them, of the whatever they've had, 8 or so releases.
No, yeah, from batch to batch,
So-
whatever it is, it seems to vary.
I think what I'm going to say is if you're a big Bernheim fan, which I'm not sure if people are Bernheim fans at all, you might want to wait to see what future releases look like. But if you're looking at your A223 from the esteemed tasting panel here, we're all a pass.
All a pass.
30 seconds here. Caleb, what do you think's next for Heaven Hill when it comes to barrel proof stuff?
Hope they make a decanter series at barrel proof.
Okay.
Old Fitz
barrel proof decanter
That'd
series?
be the way to go.
That's your big dream. What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, that would be great because with a lot of the Old Fitz, since they're all bottled at 100 proof,
Yeah.
sometimes it just gets too oaky, too woody because where it's watered down
Yeah.
and you just taste all the oak and wood. So if they did an Old Fitz at barrel proof, that's where you're talking about some premium stuff.
Now,
That's-
I don't think that I don't know if it's the same recipe for the Larceny barrel proof or if just Larceny versus the Old Fitzgerald, but to me, there's a big difference in the similarity of palate.
Yeah, it would be good to know if there's a difference. I know there's a difference between this, what we're drinking tonight, and the Larceny and the
Right.
Fitzgerald, but I don't know if there's any separation between those two. And I like the idea of having an Old Fitz barrel proof series. I'd heard a rumor that that's what, so you know how they did the 17-year bourbon at, what was that, 3 different blends, 3 different,
You're talking about
profiles?
the Heaven Hills
The 17 year? Yeah, was that 3
yeah.
different stocks that they had blended in there? I think it was 3 different stocks.
Yeah, I think it
Not
was.
sure.
And then this year they did the mellow corn at 20 year.
Yeah, Mellow Coin 20 year.
Which I've heard mixed reviews about that. So maybe the next year they do the Fitzgerald like that. That would be good. to
Fred
do
Minnick
that.
liked the 20 year.
Fred liked the 20 year.
Fred liked the 20 year.
Well, if Fred liked the 20 year mellow corn, then maybe we need a mellow corn barrel proof annual 3 times a year release. What do you guys think? 3
you
times
go.
a year of mellow corn or Rittenhouse? Maybe Rittenhouse Rye 3 times a year. Yeah, the sky's the limit. And with that, thanks for listening to this week's edition. Please like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Magic KY. Also, let us know your thoughts on this bottle in the comments section. Until next time, keep it neat.